So yes, when you've done a bit of pinwheel on both sides, then coming over onto your backs and just settling down. So you can lie however you like to start with. It could be with your legs long or with your knees bent. Do you want a bit of air there, Linda?
I'm okay.
You okay?
But I'm okay equally if you want to open it.
Yeah, no, I'm fine, unless anyone's desperate for air. Good. So just take a moment or two to settle down onto your backs and have a sense of how your body's feeling. And as with Linda, you probably always immediately goes to your neck and how that is. And what I'd like you all to do once you've settled is just start to let your head roll a little bit to the right and to the left. And from letting your head, and did you want that rolled up blanket under the back of your neck? Is that better when you have that?
Actually, it is nice. Yes, thank you.
Okay, let me get that for you. You just carry on lying down, and any little things you can do that help relieve it are probably good to do. So welcome, Nigel, Aditi, nice to see you. We're starting lying down. We're rolling our head a little bit to the right and a little bit to the left. Let's see if that's not big enough. I'm not sure if that's big enough. Actually, let's try. Thank you.
That's good.
Is that okay? Okay, great. From doing that, you're going to bend your knees and bring your feet to stand on the floor. If your legs are long, that is. Good. And then start to let your pelvis tilt a little bit to the right, and sorry, let your knees tilt a little bit to the right and left. Come onto the pelvis in a moment. The knees tilting to the right and to the left. And seeing how that feels around the lower part of your body, around the back of your pelvis, perhaps into your hip joints, perhaps into your low ribs. So this is one of the, and as well as just noticing how it feels in our body, there's also that sense as we often start class, or if we don't start class, we end class with this movement. So there's that sort of sense of familiarity, which hopefully helps us to settle and relax a little bit more. Good. Very nice. And then from tilting your knees, just settle in the centre. And then what I would like you to do now is a little bit of that tilting your pelvis on the floor. So stop tilting your knees and start to move your pelvis. So in one direction, you're tipping your pelvis towards your face. And in the other direction, you're tipping your pelvis away from your face. That's it. So when you tip your pelvis away from your face, you feel that your lower back arches off the floor a little bit. And when you tip your pelvis towards your face, your lower back flattens out. That's it. And the bottom of your pelvis comes off the ground. And so just repeat this a few more times, and you can keep it as easy as you like. And as you do this, you might notice how your lower back feels. You might feel that moving into one of these tilts challenges your lower back, if your lower back's feeling a bit tight this morning. Good. And then what I'd like you to do is let your knees fold into your chest.
Okay, sorry about that, delivery at the door.
School supplies I'm getting for my kids. Right, yes, knees into the chest, and just have your, that's it. This may be a little bit of rocking from side to side, a little bit of circling around the back of your pelvis. That's it. And just looking at all of you, what I'd like you to try doing now is to do the same thing, but to cross your ankles. So your knees are folded into your chest, cross your ankles. So maybe your knees come a little bit wider apart and your feet are coming a little bit closer together. And then come and just carry on with a little bit of rocking or circling with the ankles crossed. Good. That's nice. And then just, you see how it feels to cross the ankles the other way. And carry on with a little bit of rocking or circling with the ankles crossed the other way. That's it. And so if the ankles cross, then maybe we let the knees come a bit wider apart. Yeah, good. And then you're going to just take your legs up towards the ceiling, give them a little shake out. Now, what I realised I forgot to say at the beginning of class is you're going to need a cushion. I think you've probably all got cushions to hand, but I'm afraid you're going to have to maybe move and grab yourselves a cushion. The people here, I can bring you a cushion. So, and why don't you have that one? So what you're going to do is, let me grab that one for Sarah, is with your feet on the floor, you're going to lift your pelvis up and slide your cushion under your pelvis. That's it. So lift your, have a cushion, lift your pelvis up, slide your cushion under your pelvis, and then fold your knees back into your chest. Good. And just make sure at this point your cushion is under your pelvis, not really under your lower back. Good. That's it. So it should be comfortable supporting your pelvis. It's not, you know, be a bit under your lower back, that's fine. And then take your legs up to the ceiling, give them another shake out. And it usually feels a bit easier to take our legs up with a cushion under us. And what I'd like you to do then is a bit of scissoring your legs. So a bit of taking your legs wide and then crossing them. And how wide you take them is completely up to you. Yeah, that's it. So the space you've got. That's it. So you can take them wide, cross them one way, cross them the other way. Good. That's very nice. So last week we were doing a few things sort of working with our legs crossed, and we're going to do a little bit more of that today, as well as some other things. Good. Okay. Whenever you've had enough of this, you can fold your knees back into your chest. Good, and then keep your cushion there for the moment. And what I'd like you to do now is keep one knee folded into your chest and hold around that knee or the back of your thigh and lengthen your other leg out on the ground. And so because we're going to open the front of our hip joint. That's it. So one knee into the chest, one leg we're going to lengthen out on the ground. And just see how it feels to have a couple of breaths there. So this feeling perhaps of opening through the front of the hip joint of the long leg. That's very nice. Let the breath come in, let the breath leave you. And then you can swap legs. So fold the leg that was long, fold it in, the knee that was bent, lengthen it out. And have a couple of breaths on the other side. Good. And then you could see, how does it feel to have a couple of breaths with both legs long? And so obviously if this isn't comfortable for your lower back, then remove your cushion. But sometimes it can feel quite nice here, this sort of gentle opening through the front of the hip joints. Good. And so maybe let yourself have another breath or two there. And then from here, you're going to bend both knees, stand both feet on the floor, and then lift your pelvis so you can slide your cushion out from underneath you. Just put it onto the side. And then just see, how does it feel to bring your pelvis onto the ground? What you could do here a couple of times, if you like, is the one where you then lift your pelvis a little bit and drop it down onto the ground. So you sink into your feet, you let your pelvis come up a couple of inches, and then you drop your pelvis back onto the floor with a little bit of a thud. Very nice. And then just before we come off our backs, which we will in a moment, come back to letting your knees tilt to the right and to the left. And then you could pause in the middle, you could cross your arms over your chest, and you could now start to let your elbows rock in the same direction as your knees and your head. So now you've got that feeling a bit more of rolling from side to side across the back of your body. So Sarah, cross your arms like that one. Yes, sorry. Yeah, that one. Because then it's a bit easier to roll across your upper back. Good, because what I'd like you to do from this movement is eventually rock all the way over onto one side. We'll have a few breaths there, and then we're going to come onto hands and knees and do some things on hands and knees. So yes, come onto your side and then make your way over onto hands and knees when you're ready. So when you're ready, settling down onto hands and knees. And we're going to start quite simply. We're going to do some cat movements. So we can start with that, rounding our back to the ceiling, dipping our spine down to the floor. And just see how these movements feel today. Rounding and dipping. You could also, if you like, add in a little bit of your tail wagging. So imagine you have a tail and wag your tail from side to side. And then just do a little bit more in your own time, a little bit more moving between cat and between tail wagging, just to all the time sort of checking in with how does your spine feel, particularly how does your lower back feel. If you're feeling a little bit tight in the lower back, then yeah, which of these movements helps to ease that out? And I think Linda, for you all the time, just sort of feeling that you can, make the most of when you round up in cats, letting your head hang at the back of your neck. And whenever you're ready to come off hands and knees, you can do a little bit more tail wagging, a little bit more cat. We're going to just come into child pose for a couple of breaths. So you can exhale, round your back to the ceiling in cat, and then rock your hips back over your heels in child pose. And let yourself settle in child for a couple of breaths. So feeling the breath come in, feeling the breath leave you. That's nice. Okay, so we're going to come on now to add a few more things together and do a little bit of a sequence starting on hands and knees. So our first thing is going to be dog pose. And from dog, there'll be a couple of options from how we move on from dog, but we're going to come into dog pose for a few breaths and then into a forward bend, and then I'll give you the couple of options at that point. So from hands and knees, tucking your toes under, see how it feels to move into dog, how it feels to move into dog, and then how it feels to be in dog pose today. And so, of course, we might want to be bending in this first dog pose, bending one knee, bending the other, resting through our arms as much as possible, letting our head go. but obviously sort of being aware that probably this first dog is going to feel a little bit creaky. But as we move through the sequence and subsequent dogs, we will start to feel a little bit more at ease. And from this dog pose, when you're ready, you're going to start to walk your hands in towards your feet. So you come into a forward bend. Again, let yourself arrive in your forward bend. See how that feels. If your lower back's feeling tight and you need to bring your elbows onto your thighs, you can do. Your knees can be as bent as you like. And we have a couple more breaths in our forward bend, but from our forward bend, we've got two options. We're going to come down onto hands and knees. So you can either walk back into a dog pose, or you can come down through a squat and then onto hands and knees. So you can either go into dog and then onto hands and knees, or down through a squat. So I'll sort of leave that up to whatever you would prefer. Yes, if you go down into a squat, it doesn't matter if your heels come up. And then you can roll forwards onto the balls of your feet. If you come into dog pose, you can come into dog, you can let your knees come down onto the ground. Once we're on hands and knees, you're going to lengthen each leg out behind you in turn and really stretch into your heel. Now, if you came through dog pose, at this point you might want to, once you've stretched each leg out behind you, and we could all do this for a moment, just sit back. So either sit back in kneeling or come into up kneeling and give your hands a bit of a shake out, because we're going to come into plank pose now. So you can either sit down and kneeling, you could bring the backs of your hands together. Just, yeah. Ease your hands out. What is, when you were stretching your legs out behind you, if they came off the back of your mat, you might want to move forwards a little bit, so that you can come into plank pose without your feet coming off your mat. So coming back down onto hands and knees, make sure you've got room behind you for your feet, lengthen one leg back, add the other leg in, see how it feels to have a few breaths in plank pose. Really stretching the heels away. Good. Trying to your best ability to breathe. It's not always the easiest place to breathe in. Well done. Good. Have your gaze sort of level with your fingertips or slightly ahead. And whenever you're ready to come down from your plank pose, let your knees come down, untuck your toes, fold your hips back over your heels and come into child pose again. And in this child pose, I'd like you to do a little bit of sort of side to side wiggling or rocking of your pelvis and just see how that feels. So in child pose, how does it feel? Sort of wiggle your pelvis a bit from side to side. And if you don't like the side to side wiggling in child pose, you don't need to do it, but it can feel good for the lower back. And then from child pose, you're going to slither forwards onto your belly, and you're going to do a bit of wiggling your pelvis from side to side on your belly, which is usually a little bit easier. So come onto your belly, and that's all we're doing here. It's just a little bit of settling on the belly, wiggling the pelvis to the right and to the left. Just seeing if we can find a little bit of movement and freedom around the middle of ourselves. Once you've wiggled your pelvis a bit, you could have a couple of quiet breaths on your belly, see how it feels to be here. Let the breath come in, let the breath leave you. And then from our belly, we'll come back onto hands and knees. And we'll just do a little bit of tail wagging on hands and knees. I think that's right. I'm facing away from, yes, a little bit of tail wagging on hands and knees. So back to hands and knees, and how does it feel to wag your tail? And if you feel drawn to doing some cat movements, that's absolutely fine. You can do some cat as well. And We're then going to come back into another child pose, but you're going to do a child pose variation. I've sort of forgotten about these, and you might find you hate them. I'm just showing you on Zoom. You're going to be crossing, to come into child pose, you might take your knees a bit wider, and like we did on our backs, you're going to cross one foot on top of the other. So you've got the top of one foot on the sole of your other foot. And you're going to see how it feels to come into child pose with your feet crossed like that. Okay, so to cross your feet, your knees, just like when we're on our backs and we crossed our ankles, we're crossing our feet now, but our knees might need to be wider apart to do that. See how it feels to come into child pose for a couple of breaths. You could, and this won't work for everyone, because I know some of you are not so keen on kneeling, you could then see how, from child pose, how does it feel to come into kneeling, keeping your feet crossed? And in this, the top foot sort of gives this massage into the bottom foot. But again, if kneeling is not so good for you, just come onto your elbows. You don't have to come all the way into kneeling and make it a torture, because it's
quite strong.
It's quite strong, yes. So it can be a little bit torturous already. Okay. We're going to do the other side. So what you might need to do is just look back and see which foot was on top. And then on hands and knees, change the cross of your feet. So put the other foot on top and then come back into child pose again. So when you're in child pose, there's a bit of pressure through the feet. And it's going to be quite different. Again, to have your feet crossed, you probably need to take your knees wider apart. Otherwise, it's quite hard to cross the feet. And then again, if you like, you can walk your hands into, in the hands into your knees, come into kneeling and see how it feels to sit in kneeling. Again, your feet, your knees might be wider apart. How is it to sit in kneeling with one foot on top of the other foot? So you've got this feeling that the sort of top foot is giving a bit of a, I suppose it's a bit like an acupressure type massage to the bottom foot. And we'll just have a couple of breaths here. Okay, and then from there, yes, sort of on the edge, isn't it? So from there, maybe then come onto hands and knees and just give each foot a little bit of and then we're going to, so then we're sort of at the end of our little sequence. So we're going to go through all those things again. And we're going to start with dog pose. So from hands and knees, tucking your toes under, lengthening your legs out into dog. See how it feels to come back into, for some of us it's a second dog pose, for some of us it might be a third dog pose. So how do the backs of the legs feel? How does the lower back feel? Can we let the head go? Of course, bending one knee, bending both knees, any sort of movement that helps. Maybe another couple of breaths in dog pose. I've been thinking a bit recently about how, you know, there's sort of times when we're moving in yoga, there's times when we're sort of settling and breathing. And both things are valid. So from dog, unless you're sort of settling and breathing more, which is always good, you could be walking your hands in towards your feet and coming into a forward bend. And do give yourself time in your forward bend to settle and arrive. So you'll let your, let your body, your mind, your nervous system just register that your body is now in a forward bend. All of the weights in your feet. You could have your elbows on your thighs. And then remember from here, you don't need to start moving on yet, to come down onto hands and knees. You can either go down to the floor through a squat, or you can walk your hands back into a dog pose. So the choice is yours. So from your forward bend, either walking back into dog and then down onto hands and knees, or coming down through a squat. That's it. And then rolling through the tops of your feet. Coming onto hands and knees. And like we did on the other side, then in turn, lengthening each leg out behind us. Good. So lengthen one leg out, stretch into your heel. And then the other leg. As you do so, having a couple of breaths here, enjoying the length through the back of your leg. Making sure at this point is your foot on your mat, because we're going to come on into plank pose, and it would be probably more helpful to have your feet going onto your mat. That's it, so move forwards if you need to. And then lengthen one leg back behind you and the other leg into your plank pose. And we're trying to feel ourselves in this long straight line of plank. Our pelvis is neither dipping down to the floor nor reaching up to the ceiling as it does in dog pose. Good. Another breath or so if you can bear it. And then from here, you're going to fold down into child pose. So knees down, untuck the toes, settle into child. This is the child where we were giving our pelvis a bit of a wiggle from side to side, if you like. So a little bit of side to side movement in dog. And just whether this can help sort of release us around the pelvis into the lower back. Let another breath or two move through you in child pose. And then from there, you're going to be slithering forwards onto your belly. And we'll do a bit more wiggling of our pelvis on our belly. So slither forwards onto your belly. Have your arms however you like. I tend to have one hand on top of the other, and my cheek resting on my hands. And then just come to this side to side wiggling of your pelvis. If you like the one on your belly where you take the soles of your feet to the ceiling and tilt your feet from side to side, you could also do that one, or instead do that one. Depends what you like on your belly. And then when you've tilted your feet or wiggled your pelvis, see how it feels to have a couple of quiet breaths lying on your belly. And yes, I was just thinking, let's not fall asleep here. From our bellies, we'll come onto hands and knees just for a little bit of tail wagging or a little bit of cat if you prefer. So yeah, when you end up on hands and knees, whatever feels that it would be helpful for you today, wagging your tail, rounding and dipping your spine in cat. And then we're going to, in a moment, when you've done some tail wagging, when you've done a bit of cat, we're going to revisit what we just did, the child pose and the kneeling with our crossed feet. So in your own time, you can come on into that. So it might be that I'm just thinking to know which foot's on top. You can look back between your legs. You maybe take your knees a bit wider apart. You rock back into child pose with your feet crossed. So one foot. The top of one foot is resting on the sole of the other foot. And then from child pose, we see how does it feel to come into kneeling. This is obviously when it feels a bit more intense. And again, it's just this, sort of pressure of the top of the foot into the bottom foot. Maybe giving it a little bit of a massage. So try and soften our shoulders. And we don't spend too long here. We'll try the other side in a moment. So when you come forwards and you swap sides, you might just need to look back behind you. All of these crossed leg, foot, ankle things, I get terribly confused about which side I've done. So looking back, swapping your feet over, looking back, coming through child pose. So child pose is a good place to start in these. It's a little bit less intense. You can see how your feet like that. And then if you quite like the intensity of that, you can come on into kneeling. So it sort of depends. And I'm just trying to sort of soften through the shoulders. Yeah, you could always be sort of halfway. You could be leaning forwards onto your hands for the kneeling if that's a little bit challenging. Good. Let the breath come in, let the breath leave you. And then we will come onto hands and knees. We'll release our feet, drum our feet a little bit on the floor. You'll come through one, I won't say last dog pose, one more dog pose, through a forward bend and up into standing this time. So really enjoy this dog pose. Give yourself a few breaths in this dog. Again, of course, if movement is helpful, if it's helpful to be bending one knee, bending the other, do so. But if your dog pose has got to a place where you can sort of settle and be and breathe in it, then it might be nice to do that. Letting your head go. And allowing your body to respond to the movement of the breath. So that might, you might still not be sort of still in your dog. And from dog, we'll walk our hands in towards our feet. We'll come into a forward bend. And we won't stay there long. We'll just start to roll up into standing because we'll be coming down into some more forward bends from standing. So coming up into standing when you're ready. Lovely. And then, yes, we'll do this sort of loose swinging twists. Good. That's it. You can slap your arms onto your body if you like. I suppose the most important thing is to really to try and let the arms feel very loose and free. Good. Sarah, if you haven't got enough room, always come away from the wall. Good. So a few more times, swinging your arms, letting them slap onto your body. Just trying to sort of feel quite loose and easy. Good. Very nice. Okay, yes, we can let that one go now. And just settle down. So maybe have a look at your feet. And then just come to a little bit of, can you give your pelvis a bit of a wiggle from side to side? Very nice, a bit like we were doing lying on our belly. Yeah. Okay, good. And then let's let that go. And then let's do a little bit of coming forwards onto the balls of our feet and coming back down again and seeing how that feels. So come onto the balls of the feet and back down. And just repeat this a few times. So we're bringing our weight forwards onto the balls of our feet and we're coming back down. And at this point, if you had closed your eyes at any point, it's probably good to open your eyes. Finding a point to focus your gaze on is probably going to help with balance. Good. Okay. Let's do that a couple more times and then we'll stay there. I think I need to find a bit more steadiness. Yeah, so eventually if you come up onto the balls of your feet and you think, okay, I feel reasonably steady, then you could float your arms up. That's nice. Let your shoulders drop down away from your ears. Let the breath come in, let the breath leave you. Just see how it feels to be in this sort of quite simple balance that's asking quite a lot of the feet, the ankles. Good, very nice. So when you come down from this, as you let your heels come down, you're going to sweep your arms down into a forward bend. You can rest your elbows on your thighs if you like. Let your head go. Bend your knees as much as you like. Good. And just have a couple of breaths there in that forward bend. Very nice. That's lovely. You can let a breath come in as you exhale. You can sink into your heels. You can roll back up into standing. And then we're going to come back to that little balance we did a moment ago. But first of all, I'd just like you to, 1 foot at a time, slide your foot back behind you. Just another little mini balance. Come onto the top of your toes. You can also see what's it like if you straighten that back leg. Sometimes my foot wants to cramp, yeah. And we'll do this a couple of times on each side. So shifting your weight onto one foot, you slide the other foot back behind you, you flip onto the top of your toes, and you're just opening through the front of your ankle. Good. Let's do that once more on each side. So sort of I always think this sort of goes with the other one we were doing. It stretches our ankles in the other way. Sorry, I'm just going to turn it off. That's my phone. So do that once more on each side. Yes, okay. Good. And then give your feet a little shake out. So we're going to come back into that balance on the balls of the feet. And we're going to do this mudra, this Hakini mudra, where we touch over our head, touch our fingers, and then bring them down in front of our chest. So we'll come into the balance just with our arms loose by our sides. So maybe start by looking at your feet. And then stop looking at your feet, look ahead of you somewhere, find a point to focus on, and then start to bring your weight forwards onto the balls of your feet. Good. And then we can float our arms up, and we can then touch our fingers and thumbs together over our head in Hakini Mudra. So let the shoulders drop, feel the pads of the thumbs and each finger meeting its sort of pair. And then from here, you can bring your hands down in front of your chest. And I tend to keep my elbows out to the sides. You don't have to. And just see how it feels to stay here. And I find this mudra really helps me to settle and stay in this balance a little bit longer. Letting the sort of shoulders and the arms as much as possible soften and relax. Our hands are in this particular arrangement. Good. And then as we come down, once more, we can go down into a forward bend. So release the hands, bring the heels down, roll forwards. And this time, if you like, in your forward bend, you could do your sort of sweeping of your arms, your weeping willow movement, if you like. So sweep the arms around your feet to the right and to the left. So again, this idea of sort of movement. And it might be from sweeping your arms from side to side a few times that you then can just have a couple of quiet breaths in your forward bend. That sort of sense of being in the forward bend. Releasing, letting the weight of the head go, receiving the in-breath, letting the out-breath leave. And then when you're ready, sinking into your heels, rolling back up into standing. And give your legs a little shake out if you like. So in standing, just again, settle your feet back down, a little distance apart. Come to swinging your arms out to the sides and crossing them in front of you. Very nice. Good. And just carry on with this a few times. Sarah, you could have your feet a little bit closer together, I think. Yeah. Okay, and then from here, give yourself a hug like we did on our backs just before we, that's it, good. Let your shoulders drop down away from your ears. And then from here, we'll come on into our eagle arms, or sort of whatever works for us to our best ability. And then from our eagle arms, we're going to go into a forward bend. So take your feet a bit wider apart. So it could be as wide as the narrow edge of your mat. Let a breath come in. As you exhale, sink into your heels, fold forwards. At any point, I was going to tell you which arm to have on top, but just have a look at your arms so you know which one's on top. And then you can release your arms at any point. And again, just give yourself a couple of breaths in this wider forward bend. If you've released your arms and you want to shift your weight from side to side by bending one knee and the other, you can do. Good. And then sink. If you haven't released your arms, do so. Try and remember which arm was on top. Sink into your heels, roll back into standing. Good. And then just bring your feet back to being a little distance apart. So come to swinging your arms and crossing them in front of you. And from here, you're going to swing your arms to give yourself a hug with hopefully the other arm on top, if you can remember which one that was. I'm sorry, I meant to, yes, tell you which arm to do, so you have to think about it. It doesn't matter too much. And with these ones, I think if we start, the more we start thinking about it, the harder it is to work out which one it should be. So coming on into our eagle arms, and then stepping our feet wider apart again. And sinking into your heels, you can let your knees bend a little bit, coming into your forward bend. And then it's up to you. You can keep your arms crisscrossed in eagle arms, or you can release your arms. Give the weight of your head and your arms to the floor. And you can do a little bit of shifting your weight from side to side if you like, bending one knee, bending the other. Then sink into your heels and roll up into standing. And this time keep your feet this wider distance apart. And we're going to come into our side lengthening movement. So we can let bottom arms swing. Well, two things. First of all, let your bottom arms swing. So reach up and over. So Sarah, you could do a bit more up, possibly. That's it, up and over, good. And then stop letting that arm, just let the arm hang. And have a breath or two and just see how it feels to be in this side lengthening movement. It always feels a lot harder for me if I'm not swinging my bottom arm. Good. And then come on to the second side. So reach up and reach over at the same things. You want to sort of be reaching up and over. Your pelvis shifts towards your reaching side. And then the bottom arm can swing. For me, that always just makes it feel quite easy. But then if I stop swinging the bottom arm, just let the arm hang. That's it, so that arm could hang a bit more, maybe hang, because at the moment it's not hanging, the bottom arm. If it's hanging, it'll probably be beneath your shoulder. And let the breath come in, that's it, let the breath come in, let the breath, good, come out. Lovely. Come back to the centre, have a little shake out. And then what I'd like us to do is we need to turn around so you're facing the long edge of your mat, because we're going to take our feet wider apart. And first of all, we're going to come down into a wide forward bend and just see how that feels for a few breaths. So to start with, check that your feet are still parallel. So that's it, the toes are pointing forwards, you're sinking into your heels and you're coming forwards and you're just seeing how that feels. And again, you've got a bit of a choice here. So you could add a bit of movement in by bending one knee, bending the other, and sort of shifting your weight from side to side. So that's definitely a possibility. My knees can be a bit grumbly in this. So if your knees feel grumbly, you might just want to go easy with that. And obviously it's the leg that stays straight is where you really start to stretch on your inner thigh. And let your head go. Good. Simply be in the, see how it feels now to sort of pause and release forwards in the centre. Good. Very nice. That's it. And then sink into your heels and come back into standing. And we're going to come into a little sequence with our feet this distance apart, but we're going to, you might just want to take them narrow for a moment and give them a shake out. And then you're going to take your feet wide again. And we're going to be turning one foot, it doesn't matter which, we're going to be turning one foot out to the side. So one foot is pointing straight forward, one foot's pointing out to the side, and we're bending that knee. So your foot doesn't have to turn all the way round. What's most important is that your knee and your foot are in line. So your knee, that front, that bend, the foot that's turned out, that knee is going to bend. And we're going to then float our arms up to shoulder height and have a couple of breaths here. Dropping the shoulders down away from our ears, very nice. Lovely. And then from here, we can bring this on into another side lengthening movement. So we're going to start to lean towards the bent leg and bring our elbow to rest on our thigh. And then the top arm is going to reach up and over. So again, we come back to this feeling of being long through the top side of our body. And again, have a couple of breaths here. And then from here, we're going to have a little swivel around. So you can bring your top arm down. We're going to start to turn towards the bent leg. And we're going to bring the back knee down onto the ground. So we come down into this place where we're sort of in a mini lunge, yeah? So this one where we've got our front knee over our front heel. So bring your back knee down onto the ground. That's it, good. Good. Now, Nigel and Aditi, you might actually want to turn around the other way on your mat because you're both sort of, it might be more helpful. So we're going to be in this one where we twist towards our front leg. Yes, we've got our front knee over our front heel, our back knee under our pelvis. We turn towards our front leg and we have a couple of breaths there, yeah? So this one, we've done, that's it, we've done quite a lot. That's it, we're returning towards our front leg for a couple of breaths, good. Aditi, being upright, turning towards your front leg. I think you've gone on into lunge already. So this one here, that's it. We're turning towards our front leg, towards the front leg. That's that's it. That one, good. Good. And then from there, you're going to untwist and fold forwards over your front leg. And you're going to walk your back leg back into lunge. And you're going to have a few breaths in a lunge. Okay. Good, so let the breath come in, let the breath leave you. And then from lunge, we're going to be coming through a dog pose. So you could come onto hands and knees, or you could go straight from lunge into dog pose. We're going to be coming into a dog pose, forward bend, back into standing. So we can do the other side sequence. So whatever works for you, have a couple of breaths in dog pose. And then walking your hands into your feet. So you come back into a forward bend. And then rolling back up into standing. Good. Very nice. So when you arrive in standing, come back to having your feet wide, facing the long edge of your mat, and go back to the same, facing the same way you were to start with, so you don't get confused. That's it. So both feet start pointing forwards, and then we're going to turn the other foot out a little bit and let that knee bend. So whichever foot didn't turn out last time, as long as you're facing in the same direction. And again, remember, your foot doesn't have to turn all the way out, as long as you can bend that knee. Sarah, your feet look very wide apart. I don't know whether you want them slightly less wide apart. Yeah. So you can bend the front knee. And I suppose the most important thing is actually to feel quite stable on the ground. So your feet don't need to be particularly wide. We can float our arms up to shoulder height. The shoulders drop down. And then from here, we're going to come into that side lengthening movement where we start to lean over the bent leg side, rest our elbow on our thigh and reach up and over. That's it, with our top arm. That's it, that's it, Helen, good, good, well done, lovely. And have a breath or two there. And then this is probably maybe the most awkward little bit of here. What we start to do is then we start to turn towards the bent leg. So if possible, you're bringing your fingertips down towards the floor. You're swiveling a little bit on your back foot. So your back knee can come down to the ground. And then we're in, I was saying a mini lunge, but you're not leaning forwards. You're coming upright. So we can do this twist. So we've got the front knee over the front heel, the back knee under the pelvis, that's it. And we turn towards our front leg, good. Sarah, your front foot's too far forwards, actually. Your heel needs to go into your knee more. Yeah, otherwise it's not great for the knee. It's a bit unstable. Good. Turning towards that front leg, very nice. Lovely. And then untwisting, folding forwards over the front leg, coming into lunge now, tucking your toes under, walking your back leg away, and having a few breaths in your lunge. You can stay in lunge as long as you like, but whenever you're ready to come out, this time it's going to be a dog pose and then folding down into child pose. So you're not going back up into standing. So you could go from lunge straight into dog or onto hands and knees, and then into dog pose. And just this is your last dog pose. So just a few breaths in that last dog pose, and then again folding down into child pose. Good. Very nice. So whether you're in dog pose or child pose, just letting yourself have a few quiet breaths. Good. Feeling the movement of the breath through your body. And from here, we're going to come on to do a little bit of sitting and breathing. So just wherever you are, think about where you could come and sit. So I'd like you to have a wall or a sofa or, Sheila, your pillar behind your back. And I think everyone should have something like that. So Sarah, you could move over to there. And you might like to take your mat with you. It depends what, you're on the floor, you might want to take your mat to sit on. And we're going to do a couple of different sitting things with our back at the wall. And then we're going to do a little bit of sitting and a breathing exercise. So a different breathing exercise. We were doing Viloma breathing for a few breaths, a few weeks. And now we're going to come on to a little bit of alternate nostril breathing. So first of all, sit with your legs long and wide. You can give your legs a little bit of a roll. Good. And then we'll just see how it feels to sit here for a couple of quiet breaths. It might not be our most favourite position. The other thing that's quite helpful is to stretch into your heels and then relax your legs. So that's something else you could do. And let the wall or the sofa support your back, but try to support your head. So try not to let your head lean on the wall. Try to have your head balanced on the top of your spine. It keeps us slightly more alert, if nothing else, to not let our head lean back. Good. So you can close your eyes here. Let your shoulders drop and just let a breath or two move through you. So we're thinking very much about the pelvis and the legs feeling heavy and settling down on the ground. And if this feels a lot of too much stretch on the inside of your legs, you can always take your legs a little bit closer together. You don't have to go as wide as you possibly can. And you can have another breath or two if you like, with your legs long and wide. But from here, we'll come on and we'll do a few cycles of breath in cobbler pose. So let's see how cobbler pose feels. And then we'll choose a sort of more comfortable, sort of easy position to do our breathing exercises. So see how it feels to come into cobbler pose. Remember, you've always got this possibility of the feet being a bit further forwards if that makes it feel more comfortable. You don't have to try and get your feet as close to you as possible. Our knees will do what our knees do. We can just rest our hands somewhere easy, somewhere where there's perhaps a sort of just a comforting weight of the hands on the thighs. And again, can you close your eyes here and just that, trying to let the legs and the pelvis go. and settle on the floor. We've got the wall or the sofa or the pillar to support our spine, so we're not having to worry about that here. All we need to do is just let the legs settle, feel the breath come in, feel the breath leave. Also let the shoulders soften and settle. Good. So what we're going to do now is you're going to choose maybe a little bit more comfortable position. So if you want your legs bent, you could just bring your feet in a bit. So one heel in front of the other, or there's sort of half lotus or cross-legged options. Usually one of those is a bit easier than cobbler pose, or you could lengthen your legs out again. So you've got these two options of legs, and just, whatever's most comfortable. And so what we're going to do is very simply, we're going to do an alternate nostril breathing exercise where we breathe in through both nostrils and we close one nostril for the out breath. And we're going to use our index fingers to close our nostril on each side. And in between the closing of the nostril for the out breath, you rest your hands down. So the idea is that this is hopefully sort of calming and relaxing. And I will talk you through a few cycles and you can try a few on your own. If you're feeling very hay fevery, then it might not be so relaxing and you might just want to stick with sort of normal breath. So let's just close our eyes and let's just feel a normal cycle of breath without any closing of the nostrils. So feel a breath come in. And as you exhale, feel the breath leave you. And then again, breathing in through both nostrils. At the end of that in-breath, you're going to use your right index finger to close your left nostril and close just above the flary bit of the nostril. And then exhale through your left nostril, sort of a long, quiet out-breath. And then rest that right hand down and breathe in through both nostrils. And when you reach the end of that in-breath, your left index finger is going to close your left nostril. And you're going to breathe out through your right nostril, a long, quiet out-breath. And then you rest your hand down, you breathe in through both nostrils. And then closing your right nostril, exhaling through your left. Resting your hand down, breathing in through both nostrils. The end of your in-breath, close your left nostril and exhale through your right. A long, quiet, relaxed exhalation. And then rest your hand as you breathe in through both nostrils. When you're ready to exhale, close your right nostril. Long out breath through your left. Resting your hand, breathing in through both nostrils. Then when you're ready, closing your left nostril, breathing out through your right. Then just carry on by yourself now. I'd quite like you to exhale through each nostril 3 more times. Although I appreciate it's sometimes hard to keep count. So don't worry if you drift off, just when you come back to breathing in through both nostrils, exhaling through one. Just keeping it very easy and relaxed, letting the breath come in through both nostrils and then using the index finger of one hand to close one nostril so you can breathe out through a single nostril. Let's make this the last cycle. You're going to be finishing with an out breath through your right nostril. When you do finish, you can just rest your hands down on your thighs and just perhaps let your awareness expand outward from the breath to feeling your legs and pelvis on the ground. Your legs are long, you can always give them a little bit of a roll. And we're going to make our way down onto our backs now. We'll just do a couple of simple movements and then we'll settle down quietly for a couple of minutes. Is that still rolled up enough, Linda?
Yes, thank you.
So arrive onto your back. You're right, sorry, just blankets.
No,
So arrive onto your back and just for a moment have a sense of how your body feels as it meets the ground beneath its whole length. And it might be nice to do a little bit of tilting your knees to the right and to the left. So if your legs are long, bend your knees and stand your feet on the floor. And come to letting the knees tilt. That's it, to the right and to the left. Yeah, very nice. And you could also, just like we did at the very beginning of class, revisit, pause with the knees in the centre, revisit the tilting of your pelvis a few times on the floor. So if you stop tilting your knees and come to tipping your pelvis towards your head, away from your head. Just a few times, sort of checking in with how that's feeling. And then finally, let your knees fold into your chest. Just hold around your knees. You can do a little bit of rocking from side to side. If you feel that you'd like to take your legs up to the ceiling and give them a little shake out, you can do. Lovely. And then finally, just for another maybe half a dozen or so cycles of breath, let your feet come down onto the floor or let your legs lengthen out completely. Up, up, up. here. So thank you very much. You can carry on lying down if you want, there's no rush. Thank you. We have one more week of classes and I have a summer break, but I will be emailing about some, I'm going to do a couple of things.